We're here with Kate Barclay on a somewhat different Mother's Day that is 2020. We thought it would be helpful to hear from one of our households as to how they've been navigating the home and vocational demands of this present season. And like many of our homes, Kate's is a busy family. She's married to Pete. They have 3 school-age children, and so they're managing and balancing priorities of work life, of issues like when to send children to school, connecting with relatives and families, many of the things that I know we're all familiar with in this time. The tricky balance that has become the COVID season. So welcome, Kate. Good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
I'm not sure if this is an unfair question, but is it possible to sum up the COVID season for your family with a word?
One word. Probably crazy would be the word. I think it's been a crazy time for everybody, so we're not unique in that. But to try and juggle the demands of children at home and then not knowing what's going on, and the exponential increase in IT skills required to homeschool, and then to have Pete, who's a GP, who needs to continue to work, and then me in my role at the hospital trying to navigate how to set up the hospital for the COVID pandemic. It's just been a real juggle, and we haven't known what day of the week it is, and really how to even plan for the next few days. It's been really crazy.
You're a doctor by occupation, and from the outset you've been involved in the front line with COVID and the impact of the virus. Can you give us a sense of the challenges you've faced, and maybe you could share with us where things are up to?
I think at the beginning, none of us really had any idea as exactly what was going to happen in the world, obviously. The main challenge was that we didn't know anything. And as the case numbers started to rise, the hospital dusted off its pandemic plan, and we looked at it, and it really didn't answer how we were going to manage patients in the hospital in any detail. And so we needed to come up with more and more plans and more policies to keep patients safe, to look after them, to look after non-COVID patients in the hospital. And the biggest issue that we faced was that no one knew the answers. No one knew enough about this virus to say, right, this is exactly what you should do. And because of that, we had to have very agile decision-making processes. So I've had to be on lots of doctors' groups on my phone, on social media, on various platforms. And my phone is tinging all day and night about, there's just been some guidelines released from the Scottish Society of blah, blah, and should we look at that? Do we want to implement anything? And so it's been a real challenge to be able to reassure people and look after patients in a time where we have only known about this disease for 3 months, where we don't know about any long-term testing or, can people catch it again? We don't know these facts. But Australia has done exceptionally well. We've all played our part. Everyone's done their bit with the social distancing and the washing their hands and staying at home. My bit was being a respiratory physician and trying to manage that. I think looking forward into the future, once again, we don't know. And it is a big unknown. It's a really big, different picture if we get a vaccine versus if we don't. And I think this COVID is not going away. It will be around potentially for years to come. And it's very hard to know what our society is going to look like globally. I think locally things may well return to something similar to normal, but we may be facing intermittent periods of lockdown for potentially years if there's no vaccine.
So we've heard the talk of restrictions. You've given us a hint of that. Is there any more clarity to what might be short-term easing, long-term easing, or is that more wait and see?
I think it's definitely wait and see. Any easing in restrictions will need to be gradual and wait some weeks between major easing of restrictions so that we can see if case numbers increase. I think from a church family point of view, being able to gather in a group of 200, 300 is a long way into the future. But small group ministry probably will be able to continue.
You've been a follower of Jesus for some time now. Can you share with us what difference that has made as you've been through this particular season?
Well, at the beginning, I'm a little ashamed to say that I was quite scared when I first went to see a COVID patient and I had all the gear on, the mask and everything. I was really shaking and I was confronted by my own mortality more than I ever have been before. I'm a pretty healthy person. I live in a safe country, and I thought more about death at that time than I ever have before. And I really had to remind myself and make a conscious decision that even though I was scared, that Jesus was holding on to me and that my life was with him, and that he had great plans, and I would, even if I died, that I would be with him. And that actually was quite difficult to make that conscious decision when I was quite scared. But as the days went on and I got into more of a routine, I was really keen to demonstrate the hope that we have in Christ, because my foundation hasn't really changed through the course of this epidemic, and I hope that that's the same for all Christians. Our foundation is in Christ. Our lives are built on solid rock. For many non-Christians, what their lives are built on and what their foundation is has been ripped away. Sport, going out, socialising, performing well at work, fashion, looking good, all of that stuff has kind of changed. Whereas for a Christian, our hope is in Christ, and that hasn't changed. Doesn't matter that the world looks very different now. Our hope is still in him. And I guess I was very keen at work to be kind and to be loving, and when people were worried and anxious, to help them through that, because I trusted in Christ, not in all the external things.
This is a day-to-day where we're giving thanks to God for that he's with us, but also particularly being grateful for mothers. You're one of those. Maybe I should ask you, what plans or hopes do you have for Mother's Day, or maybe what plans do you hope your family has for Mother's Day?
My family have been just exceptionally wonderful through this whole journey. My children have never whinged that I've been at work, and I really feel like I've missed some of that precious family time that others have talked about because they've been in isolation together. I've been always racing out the door or answering messages. And I hope that I have a day where I can be with them, and that I don't have to be on my phone, and that I don't have to race off to a COVID ward, and that I can just spend time with them, maybe, I hope, playing some board games. And I'm sure my children have done some beautiful craft for me, because they do every year. I'm also very keen to see my mum and my dad. Very early on in the piece, I haven't visited them. We've only been, even though they live in Warringah, I've been just catching up on FaceTime. And so they're coming round today. They're going to sit on their own chairs in the garden, and we will sit an appropriate distance away from them, but they'll be able to see the kids and our new pandemic puppy. So that'll be lovely.
Do you have a message, perhaps a last word you'd like to leave with us, having shared with us what you've shared and what you've gone through over these past weeks and months, something that you might just like to leave with us?
I think at the beginning of this season, I was worried and a bit stressed about how it was all going to turn out. And I did read in the first chapter of James about where it says, "Consider it pure joy, brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds." And I really tried to look at that and think, this is really hard, what's happening is really hard, but God will work through that. Amazing that He, through His grace, will work through these terrible times to produce amazing things, both inwardly and on a societal level. And now, as I'm starting to not feel quite so anxious and nervous about things, what I've really learned as well is that I can't plan everything. God knows the future, and my best laid plans, my plans for holidays, my plans for how the children's activities are going to work out through the term, I can't plan that. God knows the future, and I might not know the future, but He does, and He will be with me through that, in that journey.
Kat Barclay, thank you for sharing with us on this Mother's Day.
My pleasure, David.